Welcome to another podcast by Petra Institute. I'm Laetitia, coordinator of communication at the Institute. My guest today is Dr. Viola Fransman, facilitator and researcher at the Institute. Viola, thank you so much for being with us once again. We are talking today about violence against children and how the Christian faith community can be involved in making a difference in this. But why this topic?
Thank you, Laetitia. Violence against children is a very current and relevant topic in South Africa. To give you a better understanding of the situation, I would like to share some statistics. But before I share the statistics, I want to say that the research done to get the statistics was done by Dr. Selina Palm, who is a specialist in the area of violence against children here in South Africa and further afield, and her team. The team divide the statistics regarding violence against children in two parts. In one part, they quantify what the cost is to the South African government and to the taxpayer, and the other part has to do with the emotional part that we are all familiar with. I teach part-time at Stellenbosch University, practical theology, and one of the students asked this morning, why quantify the cost of violence against children monetarily? And I said to him, if we know how much it costs to fetch a child at home when the child has been raped, and then take the child to the police station, then to the district surgeon, then again to social workers and to psychologists and the hospital, in extreme cases to the morgue, then the government and the municipalities and politicians can predict how much money will be needed to help our children that are in need. Now, it is a scary and sad thing to quantify this topic in monetary value, but it is also an extremely needed aspect of violence against children. The other part is the emotional part that we are aware of. They also did some studies on why rape happens in South Africa, and when I talk about rape, it's specifically to younger children. Now, the people that they did the research with are convicted rapists who are either in custody or are now not in prison anymore, and the reasons they provide for rape was that one, why do they rape? 50% of them said that they raped more than once. Why do they rape, they say? Because they are entitled to a woman's body. That's why they do it. Another percentage said that they were bored. That's why they do it. Another group said they were bullied. And the sad thing is that people who rape do so more than once. They also asked these convicted rapists how old were they when they started to rape, or when they raped someone the first time, and they said between 15 and 19-year-olds they were. In extreme cases, there were people that said under 10 years old or 10 years when they started to rape. So yeah, the statistics are many, and the more we can talk about it, the more we can begin to feel depressed. But we are here to talk about the difference that the church can make. So let's move on to that.
Yes, thank you, Viola. It is indeed shocking to hear these statistics. So, yeah, let's move on. We know violence comes in many forms. What are the different forms of violence that are present in our communities?
The forms that we are most familiar with as ordinary South Africans are, of course, physical violence, sexual violence, and verbal violence. But there are other forms that are not as familiar, like emotional violence. And I want to give an example when I say emotional violence, something like the silent treatment. If a child angers you and then you choose to discipline the child by not speaking to him or her for a day or 2 or 3, just so that the child can feel that your anger about what has happened, and the amount of trauma that it causes a child, he or she carries it with them into adulthood. Another form of violence that we are not as familiar with is, of course, economic violence. We all know that there's a large percentage of South Africans who are on social grants, and sometimes the money gained from social grants are being used in a wrong way. Some people would buy airtime and alcohol instead of buying milk or buying diapers or buying food that the children need. But economic violence also happens in more affluent communities where people have money but they don't buy electricity because the children decided that they're playing the radio too loud today. So tonight, when the children need to study for a test that happens at school tomorrow, they are being told, but you use the electricity this afternoon, and then there's no lights for them to use to study. And then, of course, the last form of violence that we have is neglect and abandonment that we are quite familiar with. I've had children as young as 3 come into my door and to beg for bread. So they get younger and younger, and when I ask, where's your mom? Then they will say, she's asleep or she's at home. So it's not like the adults in their lives are not there, they're just not taking care of them.
Viola, there are different role players fighting violence against our children. One of the role players is the Christian community. What role can they play in this?
There are 2 roles that the Christian community can play, or shall I rather say 2 categories of roles. One is to help shape different beliefs or different paradigms about violence against children. One of the things that the church, or we as the Christian faith community, should remember is that we have a mandate from God to take care of the vulnerable. And children are the vulnerable. We don't need the police or church leaders or politicians to tell us to take care of these children. It is what God expects of us to do. We should also begin to have a different view of the value of children, the value of all children, not just our own children that live in our homes. And I would like to link that value to Jesus' behavior in Matthew 18, especially verse 5, where he says, whoever welcomes such a little one as this welcomes me. And then again, spiritual beliefs that we should begin to change in ourselves. What we believe that we grew up with regarding violence and how they should be different now that we begin to learn more about God. Now, what some of the harmful beliefs that are currently in the Christian faith community that need our attention, that needs discussion, is what is our stance on corporal punishment? Is it the only way to discipline a child? What is our stance on sexuality? Should it be something that the church will never talk about? God created us as we are. So one of the students this morning said to me in class, he wondered, he's 18, he said to me, he wondered what happened to the prophetic voice of the church. He said the same mom and dad who gives a beating with a belt, and the same mom and dad who refuses to buy electricity when the children listen to the radio too long or too hard, and the same mom and dad who drinks, and the same mom and dad who knows of somebody close to them who raped. They are the same people that are in church on a Sunday or on a Wednesday or on a Tuesday, whenever the prayer meetings are. So where is the prophetic voice of the church in that situation? The church is the only place where all of us come together, all of those people. So what are we going to do about it? We can't remain silent about it. So beliefs in the one end, and then other practical things that we can do. The practical things I will get to in your next question.
So Viola, what can ordinary Christians, like the listeners, do to aid ending violence against children?
The first thing that we can begin to do is to own the problem of violence against children. The fact that it doesn't happen in our home or in our street, that it happens in another part of town or in different towns or in the newspapers, is not something that gives us the right to say we don't have a problem with violence against children, because we do. It is our problem. We are the Christian faith community that's been placed here with a mandate from God to do something about it. And if we don't, then we're not being obedient to God. Another thing that we have to do as the Christian faith community, and that includes all of us, is to revisit our own beliefs about corporal punishment. For one, we all grew up in different homes. Discipline was administered in different ways to us that either built us or broke us. And now that we are older and we know differently, we should do more to ask ourselves, if this child that I have in my house or a family child who visits me does something and discipline is needed, is corporal punishment the only way? What are some of the more constructive ways to administer discipline? Now, I firmly believe that adults still administer corporal punishment, some of them because they do not know another way. And the church and us as the Christian faith community should become a space where we talk and become creative about how we administer discipline. I have a godson of 3 years old, and he and I have a very good relationship. He would get angry with me about something, or I would get angry with him, but then he would talk to me. And he can only talk to me because we have a good relationship. So I can say that the core of changing the way that we discipline our children lies in the type of relationship that we grow with that child or that we currently have with that child. Another thing that we have to do is to distinguish between what is a gender role and what is a life skill. Yes, we have boys and they have special needs. Yes, we have girls and they have special needs. But washing dishes, is it a life skill or is it something only girls can do? Checking your car's oil or water levels, is it a life skill or is it only something that is reserved for men? We should sit still and think about what we grew up with and what should change now. Or making your bed for boys. I've heard some mothers say, he is a boy, don't let him make the bed, the girls must make the bed. So we should think very clearly about gender roles, and not only think about it, but talk about it. It is not an attempt to be liberal, it's an attempt to try and see where we've gone wrong, why we have the current problems in our community that we have, and how it can be changed. And it can only happen through conversation where respect for another person's view and coming to creative solutions about what discipline should be can happen. Another thing that we can do is we should for ourselves say, this is our current value system that we have in our homes. Children should be seen and not heard. Is it still applicable? Spare the rod and spoil the child. Is it still applicable? We should ask ourselves, what are the values that will take communities forward, and what are the values that's keeping us back and that is causing this huge problem that we have of violence against children, and of course gender-based violence that we have at the moment. We should move from implementing a set of rules for our children. You must be in bed by 9. If you're not in bed by 9, you're going to get a hiding. You must eat all your vegetables. If you don't eat all your vegetables, I'm not buying you a new toy on Friday. Instead of rules, we should instill values in our children. Instead of praising a child for doing very well in rugby, we should also look at a time where he or she helped someone and praise the child for that. Instead of just praising a child when he or she does very well academically, praise them for something else that they do that all the children in your house. Create a level playing field. That's what I wanted to say for all your children. Then we won't have discipline problems. We won't have children that sit with pent-up anger and rejection and frustration in themselves because they feel that one of the children in your house or in your class is being appreciated more than the others.
Viola, I'm just thinking about the gender-based violence that we have in South Africa. The fact that there are so many single moms, what are their role in this? Trying to change the values of men that are already in their 30s or 40s that are involved in gender-based violence. It's hard to change their minds. It's hard to change a culture what are the roles that a mother can play in not only their sons' lives, but in the children's lives to change this thing around?
Laetitia, I think we as the church and the Christian faith community should revisit how we support single parents. And I'm not talking about giving money, how we help them to have different skills to raise their children. Because the men that we have now, and the young men, the older men that make themselves guilty of gender-based violence was raised in a certain way. We cannot use that same set of values and then expect a different outcome for the children who are now babies and who are now toddlers. So the church needs to sit down and ask, how can I support this mother? We have a unique problem in our country of single parenthood. We have a problem of absent fathers, which we all are aware of are creating a whole lot of problems. We need to ask ourselves, what is the role that a father has? What is the role that a mother has in a traditional sense? And then we need to say, okay, but there is no father. And the mother may not get married in a year or 2 or 3. What are some of the skills that she needs to raise these children that have not been traditionally hers to have and to apply, and then help her to do that the children can grow up differently. I like to use the example of Susanna Wesley, who raised the children when her husband passed away, and she raised pastors. 2 or 3 of her sons are pastors. And our other children, if you look into their history now, they're all serving God faithfully. And she died many years ago. But what did she do differently that caused her children to come out in that way? We need to revisit examples of that. I call it good practice. Look at that and see what happened there, and then try to use it in our own communities to help our young single mothers and the families where they live.
Thank you, Viola. And in what way can Petra Institute equip people to get involved in this fight, or to have the skills to know how to fight it in their home and fight it in their community?
The problem of violence against children is a complex one. It's a layered one. It looks like an onion. So Petra, at this stage, we have different courses that is not specifically aimed at ending violence against children, but it is aimed at giving people skills to think differently, to know what God says about children and the place of children in communities, ordinary communities, but also the faith community, and also to give them skills to engage with children in a different way and on another level. And I want to urge the listeners to go onto our website and to look and see what is there, to apply for courses if you can, or to register for them, to find out where's the nearest course. It's not long courses where you have to enroll for 2 or 3 years, but to attend a shorter one, if they possibly can. That will help. Change will come in small bits. Petra can help in a small, big way, so that children and communities can have a space where they feel welcome and loved, and where they can become healed again if they have been exposed or to violence or have been victims themselves.
Yes, and the courses that Petra present are aimed at different levels in our society. It is for theological students, like the ones that you train at the university, but it is also for grassroots level, like the First 1,000 Days course that we are presenting now. It's a new course, but it helps mothers that are pregnant or already have a baby to understand the development of that child from conception up to 2 years, which is the most impressive and fruitful time of a baby's life, where so many things can be changed and be instilled in that child. So yes, please do visit our website for the different courses that we present, and thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate you being involved in the work that Petra Institute do, and please continue praying for this work, and if you are able to, also please support us financially to continue to enable people to look with different eyes at their children the way that God intended it to be. Thank you, listeners, and have a nice day.